Eric, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey Adam, how are you today?
Excellent. What's on your mind, man?
I wanted to get your thought on people who drop out of public schools and how they would go about financially securing themselves without, well, I mean, being libertarian, I feel like if I got a job, I'd be a blatant hypocrite. I'd be, subject to theft, and I don't know another way around that.
You mean if you got a job that was subject to taxation, not if you were productive in a regular working relationship. Let's just be clear. It's not anti-libertarian to have a job. But no, it's a good question. And starting from when you drop out of high school, and I've talked to a lot of people about this, and we've definitely strongly recommended on the show before that people not send their children to government-run schools if it can at all possibly be avoided. And that if you're a student in a government-run school and you realize the threat that represents to your health and your mental well-being and everything else, your education, that you should get out as soon as possible. Now, I would recommend in a situation like that if you want the effects of a degree, you can homeschool, get a certification, get a GED. There's lots of ways around that. But the checking the box, I just graduated from high school versus I have a GED, in and of itself, not going to make a big difference for job prospects. I can tell you, not just as an employer, but unless you're looking for the McDonald's job and you know that McDonald's filters out GEDs. I don't think they do though, and you need that as a safety blanket for yourself. You want to know, hey, if the shit hits the fan, if I'm destitute, I can always go to McDonald's and get a job. Find out what it is that's going to give you that. But you're not going to get that because you sat through 4 years of government high school. So first of all, got to dispel all of that delusion. And, people have to understand that a government-run school is never going to teach anything other than obedience and blind allegiance and go team go, and government is necessary because government funds it. And that's important to be able to check out of. So I want to offer one other piece of very specific advice, kind of practical way of navigating this if you drop out of high school. And this is from our friend Joey, who says that dropping out of high school was the best thing he ever did. And he was halfway through his sophomore year, he went and talked to his dad and said, "Hey Dad, I'm really not digging this. This isn't working for me." And his dad, much to his credit, where most parents would freak out or resist or go like, "Oh, does this mean I have to babysit you every day or homeschool, blah, blah, blah," he just sort of was like, listen to them. Most parents don't do that in that kind of situation. And if, as an aside here, if you are in this situation, if you're hearing this as a high school student or a middle school student even, or an elementary school student who already gets it, you can go to your parents and talk to them and have a rational conversation with them. And if they love you, they will at least listen to you and be able to hear you out, and you can have a constructive conversation about this. And you will, if they are good parents, be able to convince them that, you have something in mind for your education that's better than a government-run school. And to be fair, there are exceptions. There are some government-run schools that do a sort of decent job. I went to a very good middle school, that was blue ribbon, all that crap. The education itself was not terrible, but it was still the bad government paradigm that I wish I had escaped sooner. So you can have that conversation. And so Joey did. And he said, "Dad, this isn't working for me. I don't want to be in high school anymore." And his dad said, "Okay, well, what do you want to do?" And he said, "Well, I want to study this and that and blah, blah, blah. And I have some plans and ideas and I want to educate myself. I'm not trying to be a bum or a leech and sit here and live off you, Dad. I want to be a productive human being. I want to be independent." And, I might be overstating Joey's argument, but this is pretty good, right, Jeffrey? This is your understanding of his story? Okay. And Jeffrey had a similar experience. But so Joey went to a community college. And here's the brilliance of this story, is that now every time he applies for a job, he sees the boxes: GED, graduated high school, some college, college graduate, some grad school, graduate degree. And what does he always check as a high school dropout? Some college, because he has some college. Totally honest, not a problem. And he has never had an issue with this. He's never had an employer come back to him and be like, "Wait a second, you didn't graduate from high school? You only went to a community college for a couple of years and took the courses that you wanted to and learned what you needed to learn? All right, you're fired." I mean, it doesn't happen that way. He's never had that experience. And I can't think of anyone that I know, and I've never heard of anyone having that kind of experience. So there's some practical stuff for, how to work the system, how to understand the education racket and expectations in America. And if you're able to do that, like, guess what? If you want to be able to check that box on every job application you ever go to, you ever fill out, all you got to do is, you don't even have to finish a class. You just have to sign up for a class and go to a class at a community college, and you can check the box that says, I have some college education. Me, I dropped out of grad school, and I think the lesson from my case is, it's never too late to drop out. And I want to encourage people to keep that in mind, because it was tough for me. And my mom, as a loving parent, much to her credit, really wanted me to graduate from grad school. And she was very supportive of me while I was doing that. And when I made the decision, like, no, you know what? My activism is more important. This is what I want to do. I don't need to, be held down by this program and tied to Washington, D.C. when I need to be traveling all the time with Iraq Veterans Against the War. She was really reluctant. I mean, she was like, no, you got to stay in school. You're only 3 courses away or 3 semesters. You got to finish your degree, blah, blah, blah. And she was cool. Like, and my mom's awesome. Don't get me wrong. So a lot of kids face this as an uphill battle, those expectations. But the last thing I want to share on this note is the more philosophical, the more principled, sort of attitude and approach that we should all have to our own education. And this is true for adults. This is true, up until the day you die, as a human being that wants to grow and develop and mature. And it's a process that I go through every single day, doing Adam versus the Man in my activism, just getting up every single day, living a deliberate life, living well. And if you're in high school and you're not trying to follow a specific track, like if you say, I want to be a doctor, and that's different from, I want to help people medically. That's different from, I want to help people be healthier. That's different from, I want to cure disease. But very specifically, I want to be a government licensed doctor with a medical degree. Okay, well then, you got to follow the track, right? You got to check the boxes. You got to graduate from high school. You got to graduate from college. You got to graduate from med school. You got to do your residency, so on, yada, yada, right? But you should be thinking not about expectations that someone else has for you, not about a specific educational track or courses or boxes you got to check. You should be thinking about what you want to do with your life, what's going to make you happy, and how you're going to get there. And for most people, staying in a government high school is an impediment to that process. And if it's, well, I got to have a degree so I can go work at McDonald's, well, guess what? You're probably going to end up in that situation. But if you say, you know what? I don't want a degree. I want an education. I want to learn what's going to be useful. I want to learn how to get that dream job. I want to learn the skills that are going to make me satisfied doing something that I love, that's according to my principles. In which case you go, you know what? The odds of staying in a government-run school being the best thing for me are now really, really low. And then you got to answer the question for yourself from that perspective. How am I going to get the skills that are going to allow me to thrive the way that I want to? And if it means you're going to drop out, and you want some cover or you want something else, there's homeschooling, there's GED, there are programs for all of that stuff. But ultimately, what has to fundamentally change if you want to grow up and be a successful person is that you take charge of your own education. I think that's the most important thing that happens when someone makes the conscientious decision to drop out.
Voluntary means no coercion. So if you want to change people's habits or change the world, you should do it by setting...
Well, we sure could use a lot of help here.
Quite often for legal bullying and for expropriation of property, as in this case.